Hello everybody. We are going to create a shadow and a contact shadow for this bag in this tutorial. We need to get this bag on its own layer. As you can see here, we have the background layer the way it was originally shot. We have a white background and we have a layer of the bag with a layer mask. Now the layer mask is helpful if you need to make some edits on what you have visible. So this is a good way to make a selection to get the bag on its own layer, but we need the bag on its own layer with only transparent pixels to make the shadows that we need. So I'm going to just choose the wand tool and I'm going to choose the background and I'm going to choose option. And when you have a nice clean background, I'm going to choose shift. And now I have the background chosen, but we really need the bag chosen, so I'm going to do shift command I or select inverse. So now I have a selection of just the bag, and I'm going to go ahead and command J, jump it to its own layer. And now you'll see we only have a bag and transparent pixels, and that's exactly what we want. So I'm going to take the bag and I'm going to name it bag alone. And now I want to jump this layer, command J, to its own layer to create a shadow. Shadow. And on that shadow layer, I'm going to command click the thumbnail to activate those pixels. And I'm going to edit, fill those pixels with black. Voila. Okay. Now, let's make an observation here. We have the bag and apparently the light is coming from this side. So I would like to make the shadow drop behind the bag on the left side. So I'm going to need some real estate here. So I'm going to just do Command D really quickly and I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to choose my crop tool, and if I'm in my default colors, which I am, I can just drag out some real estate and it will fill with the color, with whatever color I have in my color fill layer. So hopefully it'll fill with white. I wonder what this is here. Okay, apparently there is some of these pixels showing on this mask, but since we don't even need this mask anymore, I'm going to just take this layer mask, this bag mask layer, I'm going to throw it in the trash. Now we don't have to contend with that other line there. So now we have plenty of real estate to create our shadow with. So now I'm going to turn the shadow layer back on. I'm going to choose Command T, which will activate the transform box. While I'm inside the transform box, I'm going to click Control and I'm going to choose Distort, and I'm going to grab this middle box handle and I'm going to drag it out into a shadow that I like. You can choose anything you want. Note to self, the shadow doesn't fall in front of the bag, it falls behind the bag. So I'm going to click Return, and I'm going to put the shadow below the bag. Ah, that's good. So you see these areas here, we're going to have to address those because shadows wouldn't pop out to the right side. They'd kind of fall just behind the left. But before we do that, I'd like to blur the shadow by choosing Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And you can choose whichever blur you like. You can blur it a lot, like this. You can blur it a little bit. I happen to like a pretty blurry bag, but I'm going to leave it some detail so that you guys can see with me. I'm going to choose this and click OK. And I'm also going to take the opacity of this layer down because shadows aren't normally black, kind of gray in nature. You can lower the opacity as much as you like. I kind of like this. I think it works. And sometimes shadows go from dark to light, so they start fading off into the background. So I'm going to choose my shadow layer and I'm going to add a mask, and I'm going to choose my gradient tool, making sure I'm in black and white and that the black white option is chosen up here and that the first icon is chosen out of the 4 types of radial blurs. And I'm just going to drag out. And now you see it made it lighter towards the bag and darker further away. I want the opposite effect, so I'm just going to drag in the other direction. And that kind of made the gradient work to the way that I needed it to. And if you look up here, it's showing you black conceals whatever's on the thumbnail and white reveal what's on the thumbnail. So it's concealing some of the shadow further away and revealing whatever is on this side here. Remember I said that we needed to address whatever happened in the front here, so we can at this point go on the mask and with your brush, a large brush, at 100% opacity, we can brush the front of the bag to make sure that none of those shadows came to the front of the bag. And that worked out pretty well. So not only do we have the gradient on there, we also have concealed any areas that kind of snuck up into the front area. We also now would like to create a contact shadow. It still kind of has the feeling that it's floating in midair. So we're going to go up here and command click the bag again. Only this time we only need the bottom area of the bag. So I'm going to choose my marquee tool, my rectangular marquee, and I'm going to choose option to deselect this top part of the bag since we only need the bottom here. And now I'm going to go up to this layer and click Command J. Command J jumps just that bottom area to its own layer, and I'm going to name that layer Contact Shadow. I'm going to go ahead and Command click on its layer, thumbnail, to activate it as a selection. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. I'm going to do Edit, Fill with black, and I'm going to drop this behind the bag alone. And now I'm going to do Command D so I can see my selection. I can see what's going on here. And I'm still going to have the contact shadow layer active as I choose my move tool, and I'm going to use my arrow tools to just start having that shadow creep out the bottom. And a contact shadow again will be lower in opacity but much darker than a contact or a cast shadow because this is the shadow that's actually making contact with the surface. And it of course would be blurred as well, but not as blurred as the cast shadow or the drop shadow. Gaussian blur. So this time it's up 43 is way too much, so I'm gonna go way down here to up, so that looks like a pretty good contact shadow. I'm gonna choose OK there. And now it has a great feeling of being on a surface. There's still some issues here because a contact shadow is a shadow that's created only by making contact with a surface. So I'm going to go ahead and add a mask to the contact shadow layer and using my brush, smaller brush, and this time I'll take the opacity down to say 37 or whatever and choose my black brush. A contact shadow would never ride up the side of the bag. It's only in the areas that are actually making contact with the surface. So I'm going to use my brush and I'm going to brush away the contact shadow because it would only be making contact here on this surface. It won't be making contact here on this surface because this is not a surface, this is the side of the bag, and it really wouldn't be riding up the bag. So we're going to take it away from there and we'll get rid of it up here. It's not really making contact if this lip is higher than the other parts of the bag. Take it off over here. And definitely would not be riding up the side of the bag. And there you have it. So now we have what was floating up in the air, and here is your contact shadow and your drop shadow. At this point you can choose your crop tool and you can crop this to whatever size you need it to be and click return. And that concludes our tutorial on how to create a contact shadow and a drop shadow. Thanks for watching.